everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. Joining me tonight are AJ and Drew. How are we doing, guys?
Doing good, my friend.
Super duper.
Let's preview this game coming up for the weekend as Fulham make the trip up to Nottingham to play Forest. A game that sees us play the team currently one place above us in the league in 8th. They've had a bit of a mixed start to the season so far. A couple of good results. I think their draw last week away at Brighton was a decent result for them, and their win at Anfield a couple of weeks ago sort of makes us wary of the quality they possess. However, the good news for Fulham is obviously that Forest will be without their main player in Morgan Gibbs-White and have no manager available on the touchline, which may come into an advantage for us. Drew, looking at the game against Forest this weekend, what are your expectations? What are your hopes?
My hope is that we turn up, because last season we didn't, and we deservedly got beaten. We've had some good results against Forest. Obviously, we turned them over quite heavily at the Cottage last year, and then we went up there and we laid an egg. I think they're a better team now. I think they've adjusted to the Premier League. You've already mentioned the absence of MGW. My hope is that we go up there and we give a good account of ourselves. I think we're good enough to get something out of the game. I'm not saying that we're going to win. We're definitely good enough to get something out of the game. But if we perform like we did last season, we're going to end up with the same result. And I'm hoping that the Newcastle game was an indication that we're learning how to manage situations better, which we clearly haven't done in parts of games this season, either in entirety or just in part. I mean, AJ and I obviously were at Ipswich. We let that get away from us. West Ham, we talked about extensively. You can't manage out the last 90 seconds of a game. I mean, that's just for professional footballers, that's silly. So yeah, I'm hoping first and foremost for a good performance. Obviously, I want a positive result, but last season was just not acceptable at all.
Yeah, I think the first half last season of the game at the City Ground was probably the most embarrassed I've been watching Fulham play in a very long time. We were absolutely woeful, and to say 6 of the 7s wouldn't even touch how poor we were. AJ, sort of same question to you, mate. What are your expectations for the game? What are you hoping to come from the game?
Well, now that I'm officially going with my son to the game, my expectations are that we're going to get turned over, because that's very typical. But my ambitions for the game are quite the opposite. We showed Newcastle, who were also in good form, how we can perform. And I would expect us to do very similar against Forest and show up. Ideally create a bit of momentum with winning results and get a nice point tally going before dropping some points in big fixtures. But let's see.
Yeah, I think we need to sort of look into the squad and stuff and who's going to play. We know that obviously Forest are missing Morgan Gibbs-White, which is a massive blow for them because pretty much all of their attacking play goes through him. From a Fulham point of view, Drew, what are you expecting squad-wise? What are you expecting sort of starting 11-wise going into this game?
I'm expecting Silva to keep the same team. I don't see any need to change. I mean, I'd like to see Berge brought into the Pereira role, because I think he's more powerful. But you can't really criticise any of them, especially on the back of the Newcastle game. I think it would be very harsh. It would be very harsh. I mean, Reece Nelson showed up big when he came on. Obviously, he scored the goal, but he showed up well. Traore again a threat. I expect pretty much as you were, unless there is an unexpected development in training tomorrow, like someone pulls up with an injury or something like that. I would be very surprised if Silva deviates from the Newcastle lineup. I think he will. I think he will go for that. I imagine he'll probably even name the same substitutes now that Sessegnon appears to be getting fitter and stronger. So yeah, I think it will be as you were.
Yeah, I think you're not too far off. I think that last week the only sort of downside to the game last week was the amount of yellow cards we picked up in the first half. It sort of meant that we were forced to make a sub at half time and then a sub sort of in the 60th minute. I'd like to see us be able to manage that side of our game a bit better, because looking back on the game last week, a couple of the yellow cards we got were, they were quite silly. Sasa Lukic's yellow card was particularly silly because he got it for basically standing in the way of Newcastle restarting the game, which is frustrating, considering the fact that we really missed him at the start of that second half, as proven by the fact that Newcastle scored so quickly. AJ, going into this game, I would say that one of our weaknesses have been, how quick we seem to wake up in games. We learned last year playing against Forest that they brought the game to us very, very quickly at the start of the game. How important is it going to be that we start this game in sort of a forward foot and taking the game to them rather than sitting back and hoping that we can keep them quiet for the first 10 minutes?
Yeah, we need to be awake and alert straight away. We can't rely on a disallowed goal to wake us up and have us pushing on to attack like we had in the Newcastle game. Let's be realistic. If that goal hadn't been chalked off, we could have been talking about a very, very different result. I think it woke us up as a squad, and we then went on to control the majority of the game. I would expect that Marco Silva would be having similar sort of veins of conversation with the squad. Be alert, be ready, make sure you get at them, especially after what happened last season, which may see us with a slightly more attacking lineup, especially with Morgan Gibbs White out. We might drop Iwobi for Nelson, but don't expect so. It's just a maybe. I don't think it will happen, but I'm putting it out there in case it does, that we saw it coming. Otherwise, it's should be all guns blazing straight away. We can't rely on wasting time, especially in the early minutes of a team that will want to perform at home.
Yeah, one of the facts going into this game is obviously Forest are one of the 4 unbeaten teams in the league so far. I think they've had a couple of, I think they've had a few mixed results this season. A couple of sort of expected results. Beating Southampton away, and then they've managed to pull off 2 very decent results in the last couple of weeks. I think the win against Liverpool, Anfield, proves that that they can set up to be quite tricky and quite quick on the counter attack. And then the draw against Brighton last week, which I thought they were really impressive in the game that they played. Brighton are not an easy team to play away from home, and I thought they were really good. But obviously, both of those were away games. Drew, do you expect them to sort of set up differently, being the home team, than they have done in the last couple of games, being counter attacking and sort of be on the front foot? Or is it more of a case of, we've seen the way that Nuno likes to manage teams, and he's very good at getting their teams to sort of sit back against teams that like to bring the game to them, which is the style of football that Marco likes to play. Are we likely to see that, or do you think we may see something different?
I think that Forest will be full of confidence. They're unbeaten, as you've already said. They've won at Anfield. They'll look at us and they'll see Fulham as the sort of team they've got to be taking points off if they want to stay in the league. The onus will be on them to attack us. One of the things that I was very pleased with against Newcastle is we had a lot less of the ball, but we had more shots on goal. I would be prepared and almost expect. I don't expect Nottingham Forest to have as much as the ball as Newcastle did, but I expect them to have more of the possession. And I think with a raucous home crowd behind them, I think they will go for us, especially, and AJ's already covered this, what happened last season. We've shown against Newcastle in the second half and in various parts of other games, West Ham at the end, Manchester United at the end, we do have I don't know whether it's a game management issue or it's a concentration issue, but we do have these periods where, forgive the cliche, but we just switch off. And I think if I was Forest, I'd be saying to my teammates, I'd be saying, let's go straight at them, get an early goal, put them under pressure. That's what I would do, because one thing that they will want to do is get the crowd involved. And that crowd will propel them and lift them. Obviously, if we score, first, we can take the crowd out of it, and it will help us manage the game better, which is something I'm hoping we're learning to do. But no, I think Forest to be confident. I think they'll look at us and think this is the sort of team that we need to take points off, and I think they'll be quite aggressive.
Yeah. So looking at it at the moment, I'm been looking at a few stats about the game coming up. Obviously, that one of the things that sort of intrigued me today was that I saw that only Man City, Spurs, and Liverpool have had more shots on target than Fulham have so far this season. AJ, is it concerning that we're not maybe scoring as many goals as we should be, or is it just a case of it's a sign of good play and those goals will eventually come?
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I can't really tell you without hindsight, and I won't have hindsight until it happens. So, am I worried about our lack of goal scoring from our chances created? Yes, but we've had that worry since Muniz's original purple patch. We said that we'd need a very direct, out-and-out goal scorer, someone that's able to get on the end of opportunities and make sure that they're buried, and that we should have been in for an extra striker. Doesn't mean we can't give Muniz the opportunity, but it does mean that when we need to, we can bring on that sort of player, and they will take one chance out of one. We didn't do that, and in fact, we then actually went and let go another player that could have played a striker, granted for a very exceptional transfer. But it does leave us a little bit short in that department with a aging, more build-up orientated Jimenez and a very raw and passionate Munez. So I think we'll continue to see a lot of opportunities with not a lot of goals for at least a little while longer, until one of them hits a very exceptional purple patch.
I think one of the other stats that are quite encouraging is that I saw today that that Rail has managed to score 9 goals in his last 12 starts for Fulham, which is actually an impressive amount for a player that
Did you
hasn't
call him
started
Rail?
many games. Yes, I
Raul.
call him
Raul.
Rail. He's scored 9 goals in the last 12 starts he's made for Fulham, which I think is an impressive amount. Is it a case of giving him chances, he'll score goals? Are we starting to see him hit a bit of form that we haven't seen him have in a little while? I think the confidence is definitely coming back, and you could see it on Saturday against Newcastle. I think for probably one of the first times since I've seen him join the club, he played the whole game with a smile on his face. The whole time he was on the pitch, he really looked like he was enjoying his football. Is that going to help us score more goals, do you think?
Yes, is kind of where I'm leaning, but at the same time, it's a tough one. I think he will get more goals because he's getting more game time, and I think his confidence being up is definitely a bonus to Fulham. But I think he's still very, based on his interviews and his style of play, very build-up centric. And with his lack of pace nowadays, he might not always be in the positions we need him to be in when the delivery is being made. Which either leans us on having our other players take up those positions, which we know they naturally don't do, or he won't get the figures that we really need from him. Not to say he won't score more goals, but I think it won't be as much as we want. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I get that. Drew, one of the things that we spoke about quite in length on Sunday when we recorded the post game show after Newcastle was we were all quite impressed with Traore and how much he's improved so far this season. I saw today again when I was looking at facts of this game that he in the last 5 games he's had 5 goal contributions for Fulham, which is more than he had in the last 79 games of football he played altogether. Is it a similar thing with him that you can really see his confidence coming in? He looks fit. I know he's not quite lasting 90 minutes in the sense of that's the type of player he is, but he finally looks like he might be injury free. He finally looks like he's starting to progress and play in the way that Marco wants him to play. Do you think he'll help us be an attacking threat in this game and sort of the games coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, especially away from home, when you've got teams coming on to you. We talked about it before. You can teach footballers tactics. You can teach them skills, but you can't teach pure athletic ability, and he's got pace to burn. So I mean, he can literally change the field very quickly. I think in your question to me, you talked about his fitness, and I think one of the issues has been his injury problems. I think he's more confident in his body now, and I think it's showing. And I also think he's got a manager that's actually focused on helping him develop, because, as you've already said, I mean, his goal contributions in the last few games have been dwarfed those in his previous however many. And Silva specifically talked about in press conferences how he's working with him in terms of his decision making, because all three of us could probably do a podcast on its own about how many bad decisions and bad passes Fulham players have made. I mean, first game of the season when we had the 2-on-1 situation at Old Trafford, bad decision. I mean, AJ's still shaking his head at that. Bad decision cost us there. So yes, I mean, I'm a big advocate of Traore. I mean, I'd like us to make sure he doesn't walk for free like he did for Wolves. Bearing in mind, a few years ago they spent over 18 million on him, and he did have a period at Barcelona. So yeah, offensively, I think he's one of the best weapons we've got, and I think the longer he plays, and the more confident and settled he becomes, he definitely seems to be thriving under Silva, and Silva seems to believe in him. I think that your point is well made about him not lasting 90 minutes yet. But on the flip side of that, we now, with Reece Nelson, we now have another winger of comparable quality. So yeah, I mean, especially away from home, and AJ and I saw that at Ipswich, Traore can change the field very, very quickly. And if I'm right about Forest and they come at us, it may well be he might be the outlet ball on the right-hand side when Fulham try and break.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, to be honest with you. AJ, let's just quickly look at Forest. Obviously, they've got a big problem, I think, having to replace Morgan Gibbs-White on Saturday. We all know, I think most of us, especially here, appreciate the quality of footballer he is, and it's going to be a hard job for him, for someone to come and step in for him. What are you expecting from Forest on Saturday? How are they going to play without their main outlet there? What are you expecting in terms of movement in their squad because of that?
I mean, it's not like they don't have enough players. They've had a couple of seasons of endless signings. Yes, Morgan Gibbs-White has been one of those very successful signings, but if they didn't have the depth to cover for him, I'd be quite surprised. Who do I expect to actually give us some problems? Probably Ward-Prowse. I'd imagine he would probably cause us some issues. He's the sort of player that normally does. I think it was a couple of free kicks from one of the West Ham games last season where he showed us just how dangerous he can be. I think one of them came off of a save and then onto the post or something like that. So we'd need to be very wary of that, especially if we end up giving away silly free kicks like we did against Newcastle. If we do that sort of thing and they've got Ward-Prowse in the lineup, we're essentially gifting them very good goal-scoring opportunities, both from deliveries into other players or direct free kicks.
Yeah, I think I saw on Monday. I think that it's been something like 80 or 79 free kicks that Ward-Prowse has taken since he last scored. Which is a lovely fact to know when Fulham are coming to town, because as typical
He'll
as we
score
are, we know what's likely to happen on Saturday. Quickly before we go, we'll do what we always do with these games. Let's talk about one player that we are all wary of, obviously, to look out for from the Forest team, who we expect from Fulham to sort of have a good game, and put a score prediction. Drew, let's start with you, mate. Give us one from each and a score prediction.
Well, Chris Wood has been a bit, as you know, seems to be leading the line well for them. Their wingers Their wingers are good. I mean, I take on board what AJ says. If we do stupid stuff, which let's be honest with each other, we are well capable of doing, and we give away a lot of stupid free kicks, we'll be playing into the hands of Ward-Prowse. But I think Chris Wood's had a bit of a renaissance, and I don't think. And while they've got some great wingers, I think we'd be very naive to look beyond him, because although he's not the most athletic, he knows his way around a football field, and he's not frightened to get amongst it. So it's a bit of a pivotal point in terms of results. I think it. I'm hoping. I think the best Fulham are going to get is a score draw. Got a sneaky feeling Forest might do it 2-1, but I'm hoping it's a 1-1. But I've got a sneaky feeling Forest might score a couple. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm a Fulham fan, so
AJ, what about yourself, mate? One from each and a scoreline prediction.
I mean, I originally said Ward-Prowse is one to keep an eye out for, but in the sense of it being Fulham, we've got to keep an eye on Nico Williams and Ola Aina, don't we? In very traditional fashion, having them score against us would be very typical. Score prediction 2-2. I don't think we come away beating them as the first team to take away their unbeaten record this season. I think they'll get a little bit of media hype around that after drawing with us in some sort of dramatic fashion, and then it'll come to the next game and they'll lose randomly. Fulham player to watch out for. To be honest, I think this is a game where Anderson is going to be the most important player. I think he is the difference between those early Manchester United and West Ham games compared to the result we got against Newcastle, where it went 2-1 and it all could have gone belly up from there. We didn't see that sort of leadership and control of the game during the West Ham or the Manchester United game. So I think he's the difference maker, and I think he'll be vitally important to them having an early onslaught against us and us surviving it if at all possible.
Yeah, I think that it's probably quite tight scorelines you're both predicting. I've got a funny feeling that, after last week and me putting my foot in it a couple of times online saying I just didn't see a scoring, and then I scoring 3 goals. And the couple of weeks in a row I put in like high score predictions and we've managed to scrape 1 goal. So I've got a funny feeling that probably 2-2 is not a bad shout. And 2-2 will probably be with what I would go for. In terms of players to watch, personally, I think Hudson-Odoi is a player we really have to look out for. I think he's been playing really, really well for them so far this season. He's probably been pivotal in some of the results they've had in the way that they played. And I think that last week, after Morgan Gibbs-White was sent off, I think it was important that he sort of controlled the rest of the game for them in midfield, which he did really, really well. In terms of us, Anderson's a great shout in terms of someone to watch out for. I think that he may well be someone to look out for on the attacking side of things as well as the defensive side of things. I imagine he's crossfield balls over to Iwobi and over to Traore are probably going to be quite important on Saturday, especially if we're trying to sort of counter-attack and relieve some pressure that we know we probably will face at some point during the game. So for me, I'd also say Anderson is someone to watch out for, and Hudson-Odoi. That's it really for this preview show. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. Please, everyone, like and subscribe to the show. Share it with your Fulham mates. We'll see you on Monday with our review of this game, hopefully with a positive result for Fulham. If not, we'll have some fun talking about it on Sunday, won't we? Other than that, come on, you Whites, and see you guys soon.